What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve. We are on episode 205. And today, guys, we are talking Dynasty buy lows and sell highs. And, of course, my co-host tonight, John, just left the room. So hopefully he'll be back in a second. As you guys know, Coach John is back, I think. We'll see about that. He is having some technical difficulties in Florida right now because there's a thunderstorm going on, and we know in Florida it likes the thunder and rain consistently down there. If you're wondering where Coach Gibbs is, he's got some adult things to take care of. Man just got married. He's got to go do some things for him and his lovely wife. So he'll be back next week, so have no worries, guys. We just, this week, because of Memorial Day weekend, we wanted to relax, be with our families and friends, and not really worry about having to do a podcast today. So we decided to do a Wednesday podcast. And usually we have a guest, but no guest this week, guys, unfortunately. There's some miscommunications and everything between me and my boy Dan. And so we are doing this now. So until we get Coach John back in the building here, guys, we're going to start with some fantasy news. There's not a ton of fantasy news going on unless you're sitting there watching everything that everyone is talking about in the OTAs right now. I wouldn't take it with a grain. I would take it with a grain of salt. Everyone right now is in the best shape of their lives or is doing fantastic, looks better than ever. They're playing without pads, guys. We really can't go too crazy in what's going on with OTAs. When it starts getting close to the training camp and you're hearing these guys are outperforming other guys, that's when you really want to start, all right, you got to take that into consideration now when these drafts are coming up. Today, guys, we have our last Dynasty show, probably for a while now. We're going to really get into these redraft season here. We're going to start talking about the players and their potential for just this coming season and what you should be doing while drafting for a redraft. And again, some of this does relate to Dynasty because you have to obviously play the season still, and you might want to know as a contender who's going to be performing to that standard that you can go out there and buy them and whatnot. But today we have some Dynasty buy lows and sell highs. So getting back to the news now, I kind of got sidetracked there a little bit. There's not too much going on. Tyson Williams signed with the Colts. That's great. So did Philip Lindsay, if I didn't mention that already. Again, both of these are pretty much camp sightings. I wouldn't expect much out of them unless Jonathan Taylor were to go down. Jeremy Mcnichols signed with the Falcons. This could be interesting, but Jeremy Mcnichols did not really do much in his time in Tennessee. But again, opportunity knocks when it does. At this point, this Atlanta backfield can be very much wide open outside of Cordell Patterson. I mean, you have Tyler Algier, you have Damian Williams. None of these guys really screamed starting running back potential here. So Mcnichols has an opportunity. He's worth a pickup in Dynasty leagues if you're short at RB to see maybe if he makes the roster or not. Again, you'll find out pretty soon when it comes to that. And then I guess the second biggest thing, David Njoku signed a 4-year extension with the Cleveland Browns. And that's great for him. And his fantasy potential and Dynasty overall potential moving forward, it's kind of up in the air still. I mean, you have Sean Watson there, so you'd hope that, he's a locked tight end one, but he really hasn't done that over his career. He's a lot of boom games over his career, his 4-year career in Cleveland, but he really never stepped up to that level of, tight end one echelon right now. He has a skill set, the attributes, and everything in between, but he hasn't really stepped up for us in fantasy enough to really boom that top tier tight end one. But again, this 4-year extension hopefully means that we're going to see David Njoku have more opportunity to be a potential or tight end one in fantasy. So I like where his future value is going right now. Definitely someone you want to hold on to. Definitely someone I think at this point you might have trouble buying. But again, he's going really low. And in terms of a redraft season, David Njoku is going basically at the last couple picks of the draft. So you could definitely snag him then. It looks like Coach John is back into the building here now, so let me see if I can get him in the show here.
Cataclysmic rain happening in Southwest Florida right now. It is intense, to say
the least. I get it, brother. You probably went out once again. Of course, obviously, like I mentioned, Coach John's dealing with some thunderstorm issues, so we're going to hopefully get him back in here that he can stay and talk for more than a few seconds. So you get to see his pretty smile here for the next until his thing maybe cuts out. So I'll just continue going with the fantasy news. Dorell Williams signed with the Arizona Cardinals. As you guys remember, he was a Kansas City Chief last year and performed very well last season. Someone who almost got over 1,000 all-purpose yards and was a key contributor for our fantasy leagues when Clyde Edwards-Helaire went down, even when Clyde came back. A little surprised they didn't re-sign him, to be honest there. I thought he did a really great job at being their main back, or at least a big compliment to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but obviously they went a different direction. But for the Cardinals, this opens up a different, interesting opportunity right now in Dynasty, because I think Dorell Williams might have been cut in some of your teams. So if he's still sitting out, because maybe people are like, well, he's not with a team, let me cut him. Go out there and try to get him. He's probably already signed to another team. But what kind of impact does this make for the Cardinals backfield now? Well, James Connors is still going to be the RB1 on this team. But we know James Connors has a history of being injured and whatnot. Dorell Williams, he's been pretty good at staying healthy the last few years and been a key contributor to that Chiefs offense. The Arizona Cardinals offense, they're pretty good as well. So I think Dorell Williams is definitely someone who has, top 40 upside as an RB right now that could end up at some point during the season being the main ball carrier for this offense here because of a guy like James Conner and his injury overall. Looks like Coach John's back once again. What's up, John?
What's up? This is gonna be a fiasco.
Yeah, it's okay, brother. We're gonna keep going. I got through the news for us, so we can kind of skip over that, and we'll get right into the juice of our conversation here. So, like I said, guys, buy low, sell high dynasty assets. And we're going to kind of give you guys some guys to kind of go out there and get over the summer or sell off over the summer before the season really kicks off. So we're going to start with the good, obviously, here and go with the buy lows. John, I'll let you go first, my friend, because I've talked for a hot minute here. So who's your first buy low option right now?
My first buy low option is going to be DJ Moore. Now, I like DJ Moore for two reasons. And when I look for, I guess philosophically, when I look for buy lows, the two things I look for are young breakout ages and young players in general, because they still have a little while left in their careers. And I look for people who are in nebulous situations, who are in sort of like, people don't want a piece of that. Like, you don't want a piece of quarterback, controversy. Like, you don't know who the quarterback's going to be in if it's Sam Darnold, if it's Matt Corral, you don't know what's going to happen. But I believe in the talent of DJ Moore. I think he's a 1,000-yard guy. That's his floor. I think he's, the touchdowns will come eventually as quarterback play increases and that offense tends to, trend upwards. A healthy CMC makes that offense really move differently as well. So I think that there's a lot of pieces to like that. Again, quarterback sucks, but those are where you have to sort of dig deep and put your hands in the mud, and you might come out with a diamond. DJ Moore to me is a buy low for that reason. I think he doesn't cost a lot to acquire. People are tired of him. They've had him on their roster for 2-3 years now, and he hasn't broken into that elite tier. But if you can build your roster out where he's your sort of boomer bust wide receiver 2, or with some upside, a low end wide receiver 2 with upside, or maybe even in some teams, if you're lucky enough, you can build him as a great 3. I think you're in good shape. I think that he's going to return enough value in next year and then years to come, if that quarterback, if they do figure out that quarterback situation, and all of a sudden, DJ Moore looks like a top 10 guy.
Yeah, I love that option there, John. Honestly, he just signed an extension. If it's not this year, it's possibly next year, and the man's still young enough to really go out there and ball out. It's really the touchdown that's been killing him. He's got no more than 4 in any season, but he's a guy who can average a double-double, an average 10 targets a game, honestly, in a week here because of the way this offense is ran. So, this is the time where people aren't really thrilled to have Sam Darnold or Matt Corral as his starting quarterback. So, good time to go out and buy for sure. Love that there, John.
He's going as the wide receiver 22 right now as ADP. And that's, I think, his floor. I don't see him outside of the world where he's a top 25 wide receiver. Even with a bad offense, I think he's still going to get enough volume that he'll be, that's where he's going to be. But there's upside. And especially in a dynasty league, when you're looking in a 2-3 year window, that's the type of player I want to acquire.
Right, exactly. Definitely. Love that. All right, so over to my first buy low, guys. I went with Isaiah Spiller. rookie with the Los Angeles Chargers here now. And you guys might have been seeing him a lot in your rookie drafts this past month here now. And I got to tell you, he's definitely someone you still want to go out there and acquire if you can right now. Isaiah Spiller was somebody from the college level who I had as a third-ranked running back coming into the NFL draft, and I think he landed in a perfect situation. Again, we talked about him a lot during May, but this is where you got to go out there and acquire him because the unknown is still there. Like, oh, is he ever going to turn into anything? Again, it's risk because it's the unknown. But Isaiah Spiller ends up in a great situation where, Austin Eckler is already 26 years old, or 27 next year. Someone who's a little smaller of a back, should be more of the pass-catching back than the guy who does the in-between the tackles and the goal line work, where he had 12 touchdowns inside the 20 last year. High-power offense. You got to assume that Isaiah Spiller is going to see some of that work there if he is going to be the number 2, which I expect him to be the number 2 there. He could end up having a really good season, and even going in 2023, 2024, he could end up being the main starter by 2024 season because, Austin Eckler is getting up there in age. So Spiller is definitely a guy now that, throwing out, again, it might seem risky, but this is where he was going in drafts, 2023 or 2024 second right now to go get Isaiah Spiller. I would be doing that every which way if you're in need of a running back because next year's class has a lot of great running backs. A lot of it's top heavy. You might not be able to get a really good running back who could end up providing you with great fantasy value over the next 2 seasons. So Isaiah Spiller is definitely a guy this summer to go out there and acquire.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like Isaiah Spiller. I think calling your shot on some rookies that are deep in a backfield or look like they're deep on a depth chart, that's the time to make that call and call your shot. If you called your shot with, Alvin Kamara when he was the 3rd running back on his rookie year early on, if you called that shot and you said, you know what, I think Alvin Kamara is going to win this over an aging Adrian Peterson and Mark Ingram, these guys, if you're like, I think that Alvin Kamara can arise out of this. He did, and you are sitting pretty. I think Isaiah Spiller is a great example of that too, where if you call your shot now, right now it might seem kind of ballsy because he's buried in a depth chart or whatever, but who knows next year? Who knows, 6 months from now, if what the depth chart looks like and how, Austin Eckler, if he can handle a full workload and all these different things, I think it's a great call. I think calling your shot on rookies right now is the time to do it. Post-rookie draft, because the hype is all died down now. You're in the doldrums of summer. People are itching for trades. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I just spent a 2nd or a 3rd on this rookie. Whatever. I'll trade him away for nothing, And
2023 class is everyone's dream right now. So taking advantage of that, because again, we don't know what the class is going to do yet. Right. Everyone's saying it's going to be the greatest class ever or a really great class. This is the time now to kind of basically just use that to your advantage to sell off draft picks to get players who have put themselves in great situations right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, John, over to your number 2. Who's your number 2 buy low?
I'm going to go with another one, and this is also a philosophy sort of standpoint on buy lows. I always try and buy low on wide receivers because they're the ones whose situation can change dramatically over the blink of an eye. I think, and they're also the ones where skills are a little bit more translatable. They don't have as many pieces that they rely on to do well. They don't need certain things. So I look for wide receivers that are talented, athletic, and young. And the person who jumps off the page to me is DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf to me is young, athletic, a great wide receiver. We've seen monster games. We've seen 200-yard games, multi-touchdown games. I mean, he can do it. The problem is right now, similar to DJ Moore, he has a bum for a quarterback. And we're talking Drew Lock and possibly Geno Smith. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Geno doesn't win that job. He could win that job. And DK Metcalf played okay with Geno Smith. He was serviceable. He's not winning you weeks, but you know what? He's not going to really bottom out and crap out on you either. He was okay. He was in that wide receiver 18-ish range in that ballpark. So I think that you're going to kind of, where you're acquiring him now is he is, let me look it up because I'm going to be wide receiver 17 right now in PPR ADP. So I think you're kind of, again, you're acquiring him at his sort of pure value. You're not overpaying. You're not underpaying. I think this is kind of going to be where he's at. But we know that Seattle wants to be a win now franchise. They don't want to do this long drawn out rebuild. They just don't. So I think they're going to try and address this quarterback situation sooner rather than later, whether it's at some point this year or at some point next year. They're going to attack that position. And they know that if they do that, they have the weapons around. They have, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Walker now. They have some offensive weapons, Noah Fant. They have pieces. So I think that they're going to go and try and get a premier quarterback at some point in the next year or two. And DK Metcalf will go back to being the same. It's funny, the inverse of what Cortland Sutton did. Cortland Sutton was left for dead last year. Now all of a sudden he gets Russell Wilson and he's a top 10 guy. And it's like, yeah, well, that's how quickly it happens for wide receivers sometimes. It's so, I think DK Metcalf, again, is a good buy low because of athletic profile and because of things that he can do that other players can't. And now's the time to buy low when people don't want him. It's the same scenario. And I throw a gift in there too. Chase Claypool is another one who I think Chase Claypool is another freebie. Throw low offers at Chase Claypool. See if you can tack him on as your flex, as your wide receiver 3. But we know that big athletic profile of a body can score a lot of touchdowns. So that's what I look for.
Yeah, no, I think Metcalf's a great option right now. I know that people are trying. I have a lot of Metcalf shares in my dynasty leagues, and people are trying to get him from me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to buy. I'm not going to sell low in a situation. He's going to get better. Things are going to happen. I mean, there was a rumor over the weekend that he could sign a nice 5-year, $120 million contract. I saw that somewhere on Twitter. Who knows if that's going to happen? But if it does happen, you have DK Metcalf for another 5 years. They're going to figure out the quarterback situation. It just Russ and Seattle the marriage ended. It just didn't go well at that point. They're going to find a new quarterback wherever it may be, the draft or be a free agency next year. They just have to roll the punches this year and take the low in DK Metcalf's one season coming up. So
100%. I'm with you.
All right, so over to my next buy low. It's A.J. Dillon, guys. And A.J. Dillon right now, I feel like he's just on the cusp of being a really good fantasy running back for us. But, last year they just never got to that point where you could rely on him 100% yet. I think you're going to feel that way by the end of this season here now. And I think the way this whole Packers offense is going, there's not a wide receiver I really trust to that extent here. And I think they're going to be using a guy like Aaron Jones a lot in the passing game here, which will open up the door for A.J. Dillon to see more of that first and second down work or even the goal line work, where I think Aaron Jones maybe sees more of that 2-minute drill more than often than not, or used on passing down situations. So it might cut A.J. Dillon's value a little bit there, but Aaron Jones is also going to be 27 years old this season. Next year, he's going to be 28. Not many running backs after 27 really perform to that kind of elite level anymore, and he's been dealing with, at times, injuries over his career. From time to time, he'll miss a game here and there. We've seen it early on when Dorell Williams had to take a game or two to be a great. A.J. Dillon, I think, did it once or twice, maybe last year. But A.J. Dillon is a young 24-year-old running back who I think will have another 2 or 3 more seasons where he could be really good with a guy like Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So I think this is the time to go out this summer, a late first, maybe go out there, try to get, I think, to be honest, right now, I probably want to get rid of guys like Zeke, honestly, a guy like Cam Akers, honestly, a guy like J.K. Dobbins, to go get A.J. Dillon and maybe something else attached to it as well and take that value there, because I think he's going to be someone who ends up being really good for fantasy. And going in even the next season, I think you're going to be talking about him as a top 15 running back, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I was reading an article recently that was talking about the effect of vacated targets and basically where those plays tend to go. And what they found was in research, as you lose your wide receiver 1 or your top end piece, offenses tend to shift towards the running game because it's more consistent. It's easy as your wide receivers, as your young wide receivers, your Christian Watsons, your, Romeo Dubs get up to speed. You're like, I can just rely on the run game because this is an easy, low percentage play that's not going to really hurt me, and I'm going to get a little bit of yardage here. And A.J. Dillon is perfect for that. A.J. Dillon is going to grind you into the ground. He's just a menacing running back, very powerful. And I think that the Packers are going to lean on that. And they're going to lean on that at least early on in the season to try and get the offense going, get the offense clicking. They're going to rely on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and then take their shots with some big plays with Christian Watson and stuff like that. But no one, like you said, no wide receiver is going to walk into this Devonte Adams Dillon-esque role in this offense. I think this offense is going to look totally different, and A.J. Dillon is a big benefactor of that philosophy change.
Right, exactly. And again, just imagine Derrick Henry, his second season when he played with DeMarco Murray, and you're like, oh yeah, he might have something going on, and eventually he got the starting job, and boom, we saw what Derrick Henry did. And I'm not saying A.J. Dillon's going to be Derrick Henry, but the potential is possibly there. So, I mean, this is the time to go get a guy like that now on your roster. That's not going to cost you like a couple first-round picks. You're going to maybe do a first. Maybe you could do it and trade something else to get him and a pick or something like that back. So,
your idea of a player and for A.J. Dillon plus is I would love that. I would love that trade. If you're sitting pretty and you have a couple running backs and you're just looking to diversify, if you could get, flip Fournette for A.J. Dillon plus, or you could flip Zeke for A.J. Dillon plus, like, I'm doing that. I'm absolutely doing that.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, John, over to your last and final buy low. What do you got for us?
So this one's kind of not really, this is like, I'm not going to say it's a buy low. I'm going to say this is just a buy. This is like buying a used Rolex. You're still going to pay a lot, but I think it's worth it because the person I want to bring up is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is still going to be, I think he has a lot of name value. I think people still really believe in Saquon Barkley. I think there are a few people who want Saquon Barkley in there, but the gap is widening. There are a lot of people out there who believe Saquon is done. He had his 1 year in the sun, and now he's kind of meandering running back, and he's in this suspect offense with Daniel Jones, and who knows what the Giants are doing. And I get all that, but again, I look for buy lows, and people in Dynasty, I look for talent. And this was the greatest running back prospect we've ever seen. I mean, he came out his rookie year and did big things. I mean, I think that this is just a fact that he was banged up and injured, coming off a major injury on an offense that is not great. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that Daniel Jones is a good quarterback and that the Giants offense is a great offense. It's not. But we've seen James Robinson on a bad offense put up a top 5 running back performance on a year. It can happen on volume. There is nobody else in that entire room that is going to question that if healthy, he's the guy. He's going to get 70, 80, 90% of the work in that running back room. So in my opinion, I think it's going to be a lot of volume, but he also, unlike Zeke, he has this big playability. He has the chance to take one to the house at 60 yards that other running backs that live off volume don't always have. So I think even though the offense isn't great, the talent is high enough and the volume is high enough that he's going to perform well and be a low-end RB1 for you, with the chance that if that offense figures it out, and if, Daniel Jones takes this leap with Brian Daboll and all these things that, like, if all the positives hit, you could have a top 5 guy. There's not too many people you could go trade for right now that have that upside. There's just really not. And so I think he, to me, is a buy low, but you're still going to have to invest a decent amount to get him, but it's worth it. In my opinion, it's worth it because you might suffer through a subpar season next year, which will be a low-end RB1, high-end RB2. And then if things go upwards and traject the right way, again, you could have a top 5 guy.
You definitely could. I'm not one of those believers, John, but I get what you're saying and everything. There's a game plan that could work there. So not for me, but I do like when I saw that, I was like, I got to hear that. And so I love the take.
Yeah,
it definitely makes a ton of sense.
But that's good, and that's what brings my point is, a year or two ago, no one had your attitude. Everyone was all in on Saquon, and so it was impossible to try and even acquire him. Now you can at least get the conversation going. Now you can at least go and approach the Saquon Barkley manager and say, hey, what does it take? Let's get the ball, because 2 years ago, it would be like trying to trade for Jonathan Taylor right now. You're just not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. And so now is the time to air. That's why I say buy low on him. It's still going to cost you, but before it was multiple firsts and a player, and now it's probably a first and a decent player and maybe a another pick coming back, right? Like,
Right.
you know, you float out there something like Swift and a first for Saquon Barkley. You know, you might be able to pull that off, and you could get that. And so to me, I think Swift and Barkley are in similar scenarios, but the talent on Barkley is just that much better. Where I would bet on that talent.
Definitely. Don't hate that whatsoever. All right, guys. So over to my last one for the buy lows here now. It's Cole Komet, guys. And I mentioned multiple times, I'm sure, over the offseason now that you got to go out there and buy Cole Komet. If you're looking for a tight end, again, there's not a lot of them out there that really scream upside, but Cole Komet has a big opportunity. I was doing an article about how much Justin Fields lost this draft and offseason basically. Well, Cole Komet still won it, to be honest here. I mean, they don't bring in a number 2 wide receiver or pass catcher that really will threaten, I think, Cole Komet this offseason here. And he was someone who was really good last year, but the only thing that was the issue was that he didn't catch any touchdowns. Mm-hmm. But he led all tight ends in red zone targets. So things just didn't work out for him last season. When you had to deal with Andy Dolan and rookie Justin Fields, things just don't add up correctly. So, I mean, he's going to be the number 2 pass catcher in this offense behind Darrell Mooney. And Komet should see an opportunity to see at least a touchdown progression of touchdowns this year. And I expect him to see 4 or 5 touchdowns and similar yardage to what he had last year. I think he had ended up having like 400 yards. I could see him going up to 600 this coming season, have 4 or 5 touchdowns. That puts you around like that tight end 7 or 8 range right there automatically. Mm-hmm. So this offseason, if you're looking for a tight end, giving up a 2023 second-round pick right now in a tight end, especially in a tight end premium league, I'd be making that move all day right now because I think Cole Komet could end up being, again, this is his 3rd season. Usually tight ends take a few years to really get going, and I think Komet is in for a really big season this year, and I think you guys need to take advantage of it now before things get a little too spicy on his value.
I mean, there's maybe 5 tight ends that I could name and comfortably say they're going to see close to 100 targets. I bet Cole Komet is one of those guys that's going to see close to 100 targets, which is crazy that you can count on one hand how many guys are like that in the league. And I love this pick. I think Cole Komet's a great buy low.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the mention of the 100 targets because you're right. It's a big possibility with him because no one else is there besides Mooney. So
right.
We'll see how that goes. So enough of the positive notes. Time to start selling some people off the team during this offseason here. So, John, who do you have as your first sell-off right now?
These are my favorites. The sell highs are my favorites because, look, this is where you can retool your team and you build for the future. And this is all about maximizing value, in my opinion. In Dynasty, selling high is exactly that. You're selling high, which doesn't mean you're selling someone after their prime. You might have to trade someone away in their prime. You might have to do it. And you might have to trade someone away while they're still very valuable, but you're selling high because you're projecting that in the next 6 months, year from now, it's going to fall off a cliff. Todd Gurley, great example. If you traded high on Todd Gurley, his value fell off a cliff once he traded to Atlanta. So, these are the types of people you need to be looking for. The number 1 name on my board, Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is just he just screams sell high to me because coming off an injury, the fact that he got back from that injury and didn't re-injure it is great, and that's a good sign. I think his redraft value is immense, but I have a feeling that when the wheels fall off for Derrick Henry, they're going to fall off quick. He's going to start battling injury. He's going to lose a step, and when you take his speed and his power away from him, Derrick Henry is a pedestrian running back. Other than those two, I mean, his speed and his power are amazing. It makes him who he is. It makes Derrick Henry the beast that he is. But when you get older and you're battling injuries, the first 2 things to go are your speed and your power. He's not this like elusive, jittery sort of running back that's going to all of a sudden reinvent himself and find yardage in a new way. No, I think it's just going to be a lot of struggles, and he's going to be relegated into a, goal line committee role pretty quick. And so, that can happen. And I think it's going to happen with Derrick Henry. And you're selling high because I do think that he has a solid 2022 campaign and solid next year campaign. In redraft, I'm high on Derrick Henry. I don't see why not. But what I'm saying is in 2023, 4, 5, he's going to be a roster clogger for you sooner rather than later. Just like a Julio Jones, just like a Todd Gurley, just like all these other greats that are out there, eventually they fall off. And you don't want to be the one holding the hot potato when that happens. And I think Derrick Henry is that hot potato right now. And you can get picks, you can get players, you can get whatever you want for Derrick Henry right now. And so I think it's a good way sometimes if you're trying to rebuild your team, you sell off the top piece and you kind of tier out how you want to build your team. So it's a good strategy to sell high and retool a team in a heartbeat. It's hard to retool a team when you're trading people like D'Ernest Johnson around. It's just hard to do. It's just hard to do, but it's easier to retool your team when you go into a league and you go into the league chat and say, hey, Derrick Henry's on the block. You watch how fast your phone blows up.
So the only thing I have about Derrick Henry right now is that, again, it's my own experience. Again, maybe I'm in leagues with people who just are completely scared of Derrick Henry's value, or maybe I'm asking for too much. I'm asking for too much. But I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to really want to move or buy into Derrick Henry right now because I think they want to see it again.
Sure.
And then that's the only thing is that I like to sell high, and if I could find a trade right now, I would definitely be selling high. I keep looking and looking, but you might get your best offer the first month of the season.
Yeah.
If he gets back in the form and he's doing good in the first month of the season, you sell the shit out of him.
Yeah. The second he has a 30-point game, you trade him away.
Exactly. You want to get him off your team as soon as you can because some contender is going to want that value. They're like, oh, Derrick Henry just put up 150. I need that on my team here. Here, take my first round pick next year and more.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I have to say about Derrick Henry, but he's definitely someone that you need to sell off for good value.
Yeah.
Don't short on him.
Timing is everything in trades, and I think you're right. I think Derrick Henry is probably more of an in-season move where you get close to like you said, a month in, you get close to the trade deadline. There's a team that's making a run, and you can overcharge someone at that point. It's hard to move Derrick Henry in this offseason. I get it. But the point is still there of that's someone you should be looking to move on. Don't look at your roster with Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott on it as your RB1 and your RB2 and think to yourself, oh, I'm fine. I'm golden. No, think to yourself like I'm sitting on a ticking time bomb, and both of these could expire real quick.
100%. All right, over to my first sell high here. It's George Kittle, guys. For me, when it comes to George Kittle now, I mean, it's hard to find an elite tight end. He's considered one of these elite tight ends. So trying to sell off an elite tight end right now definitely doesn't scream, why do I want to do that? The way I see George Kittle is that they're transitioning to trade Lance sooner than later. Obviously, it seems to be as of this season here now. And what I saw at Lance already doesn't scream guy's going to throw the ball 500, 600 times in a season. He's got the legs to move around and run. They're a run-first team right now in the NFL. They're probably the best team in terms of running the ball. And you have Deebo Samuels there. You have Brandon Ayuk, both young wide receivers who are very active in the pass-catching roles here. So, yeah, George Kittle had a good season last year, 900 yards and I think 6 touchdowns. Good season out of George Kittle. But he also missed a few games at some point during the season here, and he hasn't played a full 16-game season since 2018. So for me right now, getting rid of George Kittle at peak value right now just makes so much sense. I mean, if you're a team who is going through a rebuild right now, or you're just kind of on the cusp, but you don't really like the way your team's going, sell George Kittle. Try to get a first or two out of it. Try to get usable assets for the future right now because he's 28 years old. I don't know if George Kittle has the same kind of upside as Travis Kelsey had over the last 4 years, so he's going to be the tight end one for the next 4 seasons. It's been a while since George Kittle has been the tight end one or the tight end two. So I think this is the point where you go out there and trade him now, take advantage of his name value and his elite ability, and get out of that now, because I think in a few years he might not be that same player that we've been talking about the last 4.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you because I like George Kittle and I like George Kittle the player. But I think you're right. I think his days of fantasy dominance and the idea that he is going to supplant Travis Kelsey is probably gone, right? Like we all know he's not he's not going to be this bona fide 1,000-yard multi-touchdown guy year in, year out. He's just not going to do it. I do think what we saw out of Kelsey, out of George Kittle last year was about, it was a good season, probably high in the yardage markage, but that's about what you're going to get. 700-800 yards, 5-6 touchdowns. So I think it's fine to sell. He's fine to buy. He, to me, is, I think it wouldn't acquire a lot, but you could probably get a first, like you said, how's Cole Komet in a first, would you?
I'd love that.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's now you're getting Cole Komet and a first out of this. And so I think you could finesse a nice little trade if someone's trying to upgrade their pieces at tight end. And he still has name value, and he is still the people's champ. People love rooting for him. People love having him on this roster. And sometimes that's what you got to, attack guys that have that name value. And George Kittle still has it for sure.
Exactly. And I think you had to assume that Trey Lance is going to go through that rookie period this season here as the full starter. So, I mean, the 2 games that Trey Lance played with George Kittle, he had 69 total yards and 11 targets. Targets sound nice, but, the efficiency might not be there for maybe a year. I don't know if he's going to have the Pat Mahomes where he comes in and just balls out year one. I don't think that's what a Trey Lance is going to do this coming season here. So you might have struggles for this season, and maybe the next season he can still produce that high level, but he'll be 29 at that point. How many more years at that point is he going to have? So this is the time to go out and get him off your team at this point.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And so in the same vein, I have another tight end, and I think it's Travis Kelsey. Travis Kelsey is a sell high to me. I mean, he is still going as the tight end 1 in redraft. He's going as like a tight end 3 in Dynasty. Dynasty startups. He's still got a ton of value, ton of name things. And here's the other part about Travis Kelsey that I like. I think he's going to have a decent season next season. I think he is. I really do. I believe that, the loss of Tyreek Hill, we talked about, top targets and how it translates to the running game. But I think it's in that specific scenario, it's going to translate to Travis Kelsey getting targeted like crazy. So people are going to want to buy into that. And again, maybe this is a sell high at the trade deadline. Maybe this is a sell high once the season starts. Maybe this is not a right now sell high, but I think if you have Travis Kelsey and you were squeezing as much blood out of that stone as you could at this point, I would trade him now for something, a Cole Komet plus. Maybe he's a couple picks. Maybe it's maybe you're thin at running back and he can get you a running back in a pick or something like that. But I just think that, again, 33 years old, it's just not he's not trending up. I think that we've seen the best of Travis Kelsey and is he going to fall into maybe another double-digit touchdown year? Maybe, because he's playing with Pat Mahomes and he can easily do that. But let someone else buy into this long-term upside of Travis Kelsey, because there really isn't. To me, it's, you got 1 year left and then you're kind of rolling the dice on when he retires. It's just he's getting up there.
Right, exactly. And I think you don't want to have to wait for that cliff to fall off. It could be as soon as this season. We know he has a great opportunity, but we don't know. He's older. So it's if you're not contending, you're not looking for a championship this year, you should be selling Travis Kelsey as soon as possible, because a contender will probably pay up to have that elite talent for at least this 2022 season. So that's a great time to sell high right now in a guy like Travis Kelsey.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so over to my second one now, guys. I'm going with Mike Williams. Mike Williams had a fantastic 2021 season here. Fantastic. Finally put it all together on the field. But my concerns with Mike Williams is always going to be the injuries. We saw the second half of last year. The injuries slowed him down a little bit. He didn't have the same big play upside that he did in the first half of 2021. And hopefully he comes back and healthy and he's good to go. But see, my concern is that people, if they see him have a down season, so if he goes for like 800 yards, maybe 8 touchdowns, people might consider that a down season for him. He's doesn't have that upside of a high-end wide receiver 2 anymore, that kind of on the comparable to his counterpart Keenan Allen. Because I think right now you could consider them kind of somewhat equal because of this high-power offense that Justin Herbert is under. But if he has a down year, I don't think anyone's going to want to go out there and say, I want Mike Williams, because if he gets injured and misses 2 or 3 games, no one's going to see that same level of, I need to have Mike Williams on my team as they might right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the time to go out there and sell him off as best you can. Try to get a first for next year. Try to get a first and maybe a player out of him. I think more than likely you're going to just get a first. But again, he's already 20 years old. He's not a young wide receiver. He's not like he's 25 and just figured out. He's already 28 years old. And I think at this point, trying to go get and sell him off now for a first or for a young wide receiver from this draft class, I'd be going to do that now, because if he gets injured again, his value is going to make a major drop. And if he gets injured, you're just screwing yourself right there. So,
yeah, I think he was he's a great case study because he was an older prospect coming out. He had the big year of touchdowns, then he had the big year of yardage, and then last year he had both. So, you can sell someone on the promise of Justin Herbert and of that offense for sure. You can spin that yarn and really get someone hyped about Mike Williams and say, look, he's the down threat guy for one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. He's going to be a big play threat guy. All it takes is 1 or 2 catches, and he made this week for you. I hear you. That's where I think you can sell off and say, yep, for sure. He could easily be a Tyler Lockett 2.0, right? Where it's you're not, he has a big week and you win the week, or he puts up 6 points, which is very fine. The problem is you're baking in the injury concerns, which I think is a real thing with Mike Williams. I think he just that is real. And so when you bake that in, he to me is a good sell high as well, because the talent's there and the offense is there. So you can really tell someone, hey, look, this is what you're getting. But really it's more of like a Will Fuller who got lucky, who had a good season. It's a Will Fuller with a good season. That's what that's what Mike Williams is, So that's what you got to be careful of. He's never going to be this 150 target elite guy. He's just not. He's just a downfield chess piece. So if you can trade that away and get yourself maybe I'm trying to even think straight up, you get Chris Olave, or you get
Olave, absolutely.
You get Elijah Moore, a young wide receiver on an upcoming offense, maybe T. Higgins. T. Higgins might be too much, but
might be a little too much.
Might have to get
plus Mike Williams.
Mike Williams plus you get T. Higgins and invest in T. But that's what I'm saying. Those should be kind of the guys you look for, because you're right. Mike Williams, 28 years old. He's everything culminated and crescendoed into a great year for him last year, but I just don't see that happening consistently.
Definitely. All right, John. So over to your last sell high of the night. Who you got?
My last sell high hurts because I love this player. It's Devonte Adams. Devonte Adams is my sell high. I think, again, Devonte Adams is a great wide receiver, and he played himself into becoming a great wide receiver. He really worked on his route running, really worked on his separation. He, young Devonte Adams to now is a totally different player. I just think that he has seen, like we said, the best of his career, and he's played with, Aaron Rodgers for a majority of his career. Now he's changing teams, and I know he has a relationship with Derek Carr, and I know he went to college and they were friendly together and all that. But there's a difference between a first ballot, no-brainer Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr, who's your college buddy. There's just there's a difference there in skill level that I think is going to really shine. And so, maybe Devonte Adams is happier. Maybe he didn't want to be part of the Packers. He got paid. He's with his boys. He's in Vegas, all this. He's psyched. But I just don't know if the fantasy production is ever going to match what he put up before. And he's still going as wide receiver 4 in dynasty leagues, in dynasty startups right now, which wide receiver 4, that's crazy to me. It's like, I think in redraft, if you were going to tell me in redraft, even redraft, I think wide receiver 4 is a stretch. So to say that he's going at wide receiver 4 in dynasty startups to me is like, I'm out. So if that's his value, if you want to value him that high, I'll trade him for sure. If you want to value him as a top 5 guy in dynasty, he's all yours, because I don't value him that way. I value him now as like almost like a DeAndre Hopkins when DeAndre Hopkins changed teams. Low end wide receiver, 1 who, if the volume falls his way and if the touchdowns fall his way, he could creep into like a wide receiver 5, 6, 7. But realistically, he's probably a wide receiver 10, 11, 12. And so that's really where I see Devonte Adams. So if you can value him and the dynasty community is valuing him as a top 5 guy, have him. I'll trade him away. I'll trade him away in a heartbeat.
Yeah, honestly, when I was looking for my last one, still haven't found it yet, so I'm going to keep talking until I figure it out. But I was looking at Devonte Adams. I forgot you said you were going to pick Devonte Adams, and that makes a ton of sense, to be honest there. I mean, let's not forget, he's 29. And
29, he's trading teams, downgrade at quarterback. He's going to an offense that has multiple weapons. I mean, it's not just the Devonte Adams show anymore, because that's what it was when it was in Green Bay. Say all you want about Marquez Valdez-Scantling and say all you want about Equanimous St. Brown or Randall Cobb or whatever other, Alan Lazard. It was Devonte Adams. It was Aaron Rodgers and Devonte Adams. I just don't think that connection and that volume will be there again. And that's what made him so great, was like, yeah, you can lock this guy into 10 plus touchdowns and 1,100 yards. I don't think you can lock Devonte Adams into that. Not saying it's not possible. He's a good enough wide receiver that it's possible, but it's not like a pencil it in 1,000 plus 10 touchdowns. It's just not that same way anymore. I could see him having 1,000 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns, which drops him down into that low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 range.
Definitely. And don't forget the injury history, too.
Mm-hmm.
He was injured this past season. He always missed a couple games due to something before this 21 season here. So that could take into effect at the older age, too. So
for sure.
All right. So my last one now that I have finally found, just wanted to check out one thing on this one player here. It's important because I need to know when his birthday is, because that will
that's huge in the dynasty world.
Huge. All right. So my next player here is Tony Pollard. And I see that everyone loves Tony Pollard as, they want, it's his time to shine. Let him take the reins. Let him be the main back there. Get rid of Zeke, blah, blah, blah. He's a top-tier handcuff right now. And I have 0 shares of Tony Pollard. I don't think I have a single share of him. But the way I see it right now is that Tony Pollard is 25 years old. Just turned 25. So by the time next season comes, he'll be 26. There is a potential out on Zeke's contract. I don't know what Dallas is going to do at that time. Do they take it? Do they not? They're a team that's going to be contending. They could end up keeping Zeke another year or whatever. If they keep him 2 more years, this is my point here, is that Tony Pollard's going to be 26 years old at that point. I don't know how many more seasons I don't know if Tony Pollard is going to be a guy who just comes in, ends up seeing the ball 250 times, and they cut Zeke. I just don't see that happening. I don't think Tony Pollard is the type of running back that can handle a giant workload to that extent. He's been really good, and I think it's because he's not seeing the ball 30 times a game. He's seeing the ball 15 times a game in total, and in being very productive on minimal usage. I don't think him increasing his workload is going to make him a better player. Kind of like Lamar Miller was when he was kind of like a part-time player with Miami, goes to Houston and does very similar things, very similar efficiencies. You just saw more workload. And I think that's what you're going to get a guy like Tony Pollard right now. I think selling high on Pollard and that potential, like, if Zeke goes down, Pollard's going to be an elite running back. I just don't know if Tony Pollard ever gets to the point where we're talking about him as a top 15 running back in Dynasty or in redrafts. I just don't see that ever really happening. Again, people might disagree with me on this one because people love Tony Pollard, but I think this is the offseason where you go and say, like, hey, guys, Zeke's getting older. He's got now on his contract next year. Take Tony Pollard. Give me something really good back for him right now. And I think people will notice in a year or two that Tony Pollard just never ends up being that running back that everyone's so high on.
Listen, I think you're right. I think at first when you said it, I was a little taken aback, but after you explained it and laid your points out, I think you're right. Tony Pollard could be and again, sell high. I mean, he's going as running back 34 right now in redraft. So I don't know what his dynasty startup is. I just looked it up real quick. His redraft is RB 34. So I think you can certainly get pieces for him and acquire pieces for him. I just don't know what realistically a dynasty manager, I'm not shipping him away for a second. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm probably keeping Tony Pollard if all you're offering me is a second. But if you're giving me, say Ronald Jones in a second, you're giving me a player in a second, I might consider it. I might think about it. But I think it's hard. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around because I don't know if anyone's really going to give you enough. I think Tony Pollard in a vacuum is a good running back on a good offense. And so I think you're right that I don't know if he'll ever be a top 10 guy, top 15 guy, but I don't know if he's ever going to be outside of in that offense. I don't know if he's ever going to be outside 35. He's probably in that like low end RB2, high end RB3 value. And, those guys, sometimes depth wins you fantasy leagues. And sometimes those depth pieces it's tough to see, but sometimes those depth, Rashad Penny, it comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden goes on a tear. If Ezekiel Elliott goes down and all of a sudden Tony Pollard goes on a 3-game tear, it's like, yeah, like that's part of what, and if you can sell that to somebody and you can bake that into the price and they want to pay up for that, then sure, I'll sell it. But I just don't know if anyone's really doing that. I just don't know. I think Tony Pollard is just if you got him, sit him, keep him. I just don't know if anyone's going to give you anything that'll really knock your socks off for Tony Pollard. And the talent is good enough on an offense that's supposed to be a top 10 offense. So.
Right. I think you make a great point on that. He definitely has that potential just to be a whole kind of guy. And he probably doesn't have standalone value himself. But if you're going to trade Tony Pollard, I think using him as a package to get what you want might end up doing it that way. I don't think you're not going to get the value you really want that he could be unless someone really loves him. You might have to use Tony Pollard and someone to get the player you want because they need one more thing. It's like, I'll give you Tony Pollard. Give me this and something else, and we'll make a deal for a 2-on-2 trade on that besides the solo trades that you would do for Tony Pollard. So I definitely agree with you on that, John.
Yeah, Tony Pollard is he's a good like a what if I add this type of, you know what I'm saying? Like you get close to a deal and they're like, it's not quite there yet. Then that's when you throw out the trump card of, well, what if I throw in Tony Pollard? And then all of a sudden the deal gets done. The people go, oh shit, I'm getting Tony Pollard. Like, yeah, absolutely. So I think you're right. How you approach it, how you approach trading is so important. It's so important. Very important. So, have Tony Pollard in your back pocket as that like push a deal over the edge type of piece.
Exactly. Definitely. All right, guys. Well, that is going to be the end of our Dynasty Buy Low Sell High pre-summer edition right there. Like I said, we appreciate you guys for listening in. Coach John, is there anything you want to say before we get going, brother?
I got nothing. I have nothing. Hopefully you sell all the ones that I told you to sell and you buy all the ones I told you to buy and everything works out perfectly great because that's how fantasy works. And my advice is good as gold.
Of course. Same with me, guys, of course. You're the same, guys. But we appreciate you guys for listening in. Of course, we'll have Coach Gibbs back with us next week. We'll have a couple guests throughout the rest of this summertime here. And we're going to get back. We're going to start getting in the redraft. We're going to start talking about 2022 season now. And we're going to start trying to help you guys get ready for these August drafts that you may have. Or again, like I said before the beginning of the show, Dynasty is still a redraft thing. You're just adding extra elements to it. So we're going to get to this 2022 season, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So until next time, guys, have a great one.
Peace.